Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. In the first story, we hear from the OP about the situation his brother got into, and his wife didn't like it. But before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you're new here, and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. Here we go. Cheater gets burned hard by wife. First, I'd like to start out by saying that I'm not trying to defend my brother in any way. I'm mad at him too, and that's why I'm posting here. My brother's been married to a wonderful woman for 6 years now. A couple months ago, a courier delivered an envelope to my house. I was at work, but my wife was home, and she called me after she opened it. Inside the envelope was a wedding photo of my brother and his wife. There were also 24 other photos of my brother and another different woman in compromising positions, like the two of them walking hand in hand outside an apartment, them in robes on an apartment balcony, them together in a restaurant arm in arm, etc. The other woman was circled in all the photos, and there were things written on the pictures like, "not his wife," and "she knows he's married." Besides the photos, there was a photo of an email where my brother's telling someone how hot and sexy she is, and how his wife is clueless. My brother had been having an affair, and his wife found out somehow. He thinks he left the email open on their laptop accidentally and she saw it, but isn't sure. His wife sent an envelope like the one I got to my parents and our brother, and several of our family members. She also sent them to the other woman's parents and family, to a few dozen of their co-workers, my brother met her at work, the president of the company, several of their friends, as well as people from my brother's church, which myself, my wife, my parents, and other members of our family attend also. The other woman and my brother got their envelopes at work at the same time as their co-workers, and my brother was served with divorce papers as well. When he went home, his wife and her stuff were gone, and he hasn't seen or spoken to her since he left for work that day because she changed her phone number and email address, and he doesn't know where she's staying. Her work is not somewhere you can just walk into either. They only communicate through their lawyers. None of us have seen or spoken to her either. Now, if this wasn't enough, the other woman is pregnant, and she has moved into the condo my brother had lived in with his wife. My brother had been paying for her apartment before she moved in with him. My brother will always be my brother, but right now I'm so mad at him and embarrassed for our family. His wife was a good person, and he had no reason to cheat. If he wanted out, he could have left her first instead of running around. I don't agree with how his wife publicly outed him, though. I understand she was upset, but this caused so much embarrassment. However, I have no control over that. Like I said, I love my brother, but I'm angry at him and don't know how to help my family. And our second story. The customer is not always right. I own a cell phone store, selling both phones and service at a semi-questionable part of town. Not ghetto per se, but I don't get the most classy people in here. A couple months ago, one of my regulars came in, usually a nice and polite older gentleman that usually cracks dad jokes, one of the few customers I greet with a genuine smile, looking like a mad bull. I was worried and asked what had happened. He told me that he didn't want to talk about it and that he only needed to return his phone. Since we have only a week in-store warranty on the phone, but customers have an option to get insurance to cover their hardware and the manufacturer warranty covers the software up to a year, I asked him what was wrong in order to find the best option for him. He shook his head and told me that he didn't care, that he needed that line canceled. Do you want to keep the phone? Unfortunately, we can't do anything with it, I asked him. He told me to throw it away in the trash and left, slamming the door behind him. I did just that and canceled his line and donated his phone to Goodwill, since there's no way to return it to HQ. The remainder of the day I had my store filled and had little to no time to think about it, but I did feel worried about the poor old man. A couple of weeks later, I received a letter in the mail from the poor old man. He claimed that he read the terms and conditions and was owed a replacement phone. Our terms and conditions say no such thing that could be misunderstood as that, and to mail it to his address since he had no time to come into my store and will not do it as he seemed to think we didn't understand each other. Puzzled, I called my ASR, authorized service rep, and sent her a picture of the letter. She laughed it off and advised me to ignore it, so I did. Last Friday, the poor old man and one of his friends came into my store as soon as we opened, slams his hand on the desk and asks, "Have you solved my case yet?" My worker and I looked at each other. Before she could say anything to him, I signaled her to wait up. "Have you gotten my letter?" he said with a big Joker-style grin in his face. Now I was a bit scared. This was way off character from him. "Yes," I answered, but I was a bit confused by it. "You came into my store to return a phone and cancel your account. We couldn't return your phone because it was way past return date. And when I asked what was wrong with it, you told me you didn't want to talk about it." He gave me a glare so dirty I was half expecting lasers to come from it. That phone was crap. It burned out on me. It wouldn't let me make phone calls or nothing. I checked the phone before giving it to my local Goodwill. It was perfectly fine. "Is there anything you can do for me?" "Sorry," I said. "You told me to cancel your line and throw away your phone, and that's what I did. I asked multiple times what the problem was in order to find a solution, but you refused to give me an answer to help me help you." "Let me talk to your manager," he demanded. "You're talking to him," I answered. No one believes me since I'm only 19. "Really? Where is he? I'm going to get you fired right now." He glared at me once again. "It really is me." I pointed to the city license with my name on it. He went on a rant about how I was a liar and that this was the worst store he'd ever been to, cursing like a sailor and demanding he got a new phone and line. I told him that he'd have to pay for it, and he slammed the door behind him. His friend gave me the same nasty glare and almost spit the words, "This is why this store's going bankrupt." We sold around 12 phones that day with many payments. The store was actually so busy we forgot to take lunch. Moral: it's impossible to keep customers happy, even when you do exactly as they say. And our last story. Threaten me? You pay one way or another. I used to work for a company that rented furniture and appliances with no credit checks. My job was to get renters to make their payments, or if they couldn't, arrange to have them return the products. The place where I worked was fairly remote. We basically served 4 small towns, 2 of them 2 hours drive away from the store. One of the towns was located next to a state prison, so many of our customers were ex-cons who needed to furnish their homes for cheap after getting out. Most of them were good customers, but enough of them tried to use scare tactics that I quickly got inured to them. We also had a customer who was a sheriff's deputy. He liked renting stuff because it meant he and his wife could redecorate whenever they wanted. One day, a guy comes in and buys an expensive leather living room set for cash. When the guys delivered it, they saw that he had a huge brand new house on several acres of land. Knowing this, the next time he came in, this time to rent, my manager let him rent pretty much an entire house full of stuff. He never made a single payment on it. He lived in one of the towns 2 hours away, so I had to try to collect over the phone. Mostly I kept expecting him to just change his number, but he never did. Instead, he'd answer his phone and curse and threaten me if I knew who he was. I didn't, but I found out a couple months later. This guy was a criminal in his little town, so we'll just call him Douchebag, DB from here on out. It was a pretty open secret, so we heard this from several other customers. Now, this wasn't just about the money and my collection numbers. The guy had threatened me. Normally, when this happened, I'd just drive to the person's house, which was usually a trailer, to call his bluff, knowing that our delivery truck could crush a trailer if things turned violent. Never did. That wouldn't work on DB, though, since his house was brick and surrounded by a brick wall, so I formed a plan. The next time our deputy customer came in, I asked him if he knew of DB. I didn't explain why, but the deputy probably suspected that DB owed us money. He said he didn't know DB, but he could check if the guy had any outstanding warrants. That seemed unlikely since DB was pretty easy to find in that town, but I said, sure, check for me. DB had a bench warrant for failure to appear in court for a traffic ticket. The deputy asked if I had DB's address, and I gave it to him. Our contracts specifically said we could release customer info to law enforcement in the event of non-payment, so this was not illegal or a violation of policy. The deputy couldn't get a search warrant for a traffic violation, but he could wait until DB left his house, pull him over, and arrest him. Unfortunately, DB didn't leave home often, and the sheriff's department was spread too thin to stake him out for the time required to catch him. Plus, since DB's house was on the outskirts of town, it'd be hard for the cops not to be seen anyway. I was going to have to give the cops a little help. I started letting customers from that town know that if they saw DB and let me know, I'd give them extensions on their payments. I was allowed to give 2-week extensions at my discretion, and people always like being allowed to put off their payments. It took less than a week before someone saw DB going into the town's only movie theater. Perfect. I called the deputy, let him know, and he had plenty of time to get there and catch DB leaving. Since DB had a warrant, the deputy could arrest him on the spot, and an arrested suspect was automatic probable cause for a search of the vehicle. Naturally, the cops found illegal substances in DB's car, which got them a warrant for his house, where he had tons more, and DB went to prison. Since there was stolen property, our stuff in the house, when they searched it, the cops called the rightful owners and allowed us to collect it too. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.